Nearly 30 Iranian ballistic missiles screamed through the night sky toward Israel on Sunday, the first direct Iranian missile attack on Israeli soil in 2 full months. 3 military air bases targeted simultaneously. Sirens blaring from Tel Aviv all the way up to northern Israel. Falling debris igniting brush fires across the countryside. Schools ordered closed. And this is the part that changes everything. Donald Trump personally called Benjamin Netanyahu and told him, "Do not strike back." A senior U.S. official confirmed the call happened. Trump believed he had the deal. He believed he had bought enough time to save the negotiations. And before sunrise on Monday morning, the 100th day of this war, Israeli jets were already in the air over central and western Iran. Netanyahu did it anyway. Iran fired again. And right now, as you're watching this, both sides have only just paused, not stopped, with Iran warning that if Israel acts again, the next response will be broader. That word broader is the most important word spoken in this entire conflict today. And I'm going to explain exactly why. To understand what happened in the last 24 hours, you need to understand the chain of events that made this moment inevitable. Go back to February 28th, 2026. That is the day the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iran. Nearly 900 strikes in just 12 hours. Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei was killed. Iran's air defense network was decimated. Its top military leadership was eliminated in a single night. And Iran responded the only way it had left, by closing the Strait of Hormuz. That narrow 21-mile waterway through which 20% of the world's oil passes every single day. Global oil prices exploded past $100 per barrel. Supply chains fractured. Food security warnings went out from the United Nations for tens of millions of people. For the next 40 days, the war raged. Iran launched missile after missile. Not just at Israel, but at American bases across the entire region. Kuwait, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, Qatar, the UAE. Every country that hosted American military infrastructure became a target. U.S. and Israeli forces struck back relentlessly, degrading Iran's remaining military hardware, its radar networks, its drone command systems, its coastal installations. By the time Pakistan brokered a ceasefire on April 8th, both sides had taken devastating hits. Iran had lost the vast majority of its military infrastructure, but it had not been broken. And the ceasefire it agreed to had one enormous flaw baked directly into its foundation. It said nothing about Lebanon. From the very first hours after the April 8th ceasefire announcement, Israel continued striking Hezbollah in Lebanon with full force. In fact, on the same day the ceasefire was announced, Israel launched what it described as its most powerful attacks ever on Lebanon, killing at least 357 people. Tehran's position was immediate and unambiguous. Iran's Revolutionary Guard said it directly. The ceasefire was conditional on a ceasefire on all fronts, not just Iran. All fronts, Lebanon included. The U.S. and Israel rejected that framing entirely, and so for 2 months, this conflict has existed in a strange and dangerous twilight. Technically a ceasefire, actually an ongoing war being fought at reduced intensity, with each side calling every exchange a violation by the other side. Then came last week, and everything that had been building for 2 months finally broke. On Sunday, June 7th, Israel launched airstrikes on Beirut's southern suburbs, striking targets in the Dahieh district, the heart of Hezbollah's operational zone in the Lebanese capital. 2 people were killed, 11 were injured. The strike was carried out without warning and in direct defiance of a specific request from Washington to stand down. Trump had asked Netanyahu to hold off. The White House wanted to protect the fragile peace negotiations that Trump had been publicly claiming were on the verge of a deal for weeks. Netanyahu struck Beirut anyway. Tehran's response came within hours. Iran fired the first wave of ballistic missiles at Israel since the ceasefire, and this was not a symbolic launch. The IRGC stated clearly that its missiles targeted 3 military air bases in Israel, 2 in the center of the country, 1 in the north. These were not random targets. The Israeli military confirmed it had identified and intercepted the incoming fire. But intercepting nearly 30 ballistic missiles in a single night is not a routine operation. It puts Israel's multi-layered defense system, its aero batteries, its David Sling interceptors, under the kind of pressure that depletes stockpiles at a rate that the Pentagon had already flagged as concerning back in March. Sirens went off across Israel, not just in the north, across central Israel, across Jordan too. Jordanian airspace lit up with missile alerts. And then the Houthis in Yemen fired missiles at Israel as well, prompting another wave of sirens in the Tel Aviv area. In a single night, Israel was being attacked from 2 directions simultaneously. Iran directly and Yemen through the Houthis, with Lebanon's Hezbollah actively engaged in the north. This is what 100 days of this war has produced, not a resolution, a wider battlefield. Trump called Netanyahu. The senior U.S. official who confirmed the call said Trump urged him not to retaliate immediately. Trump went on Fox News on Sunday and said publicly that the missile attacks are, and I'm quoting directly here, certainly not going to help negotiations. That is an extraordinary statement from a president who had been telling the world for weeks that a deal was within reach. He wasn't saying Iran was the problem. He was acknowledging that the entire negotiating framework was now at risk. And then, in the early hours of Monday, June 8th, the 100th day of this war, the Israeli Air Force launched strikes on military targets in western and central Iran. The IDF posted its statement on X. A short while ago, the Israeli Air Force struck military targets belonging to the Iranian terror regime in western and central Iran. That was it. No details on what was struck, no coordinates, no casualty reports. Iran, for its part, closed the airspace around Tehran's Imam Khomeini International Airport, the country's main international airfield, immediately after the Israeli strikes. A Khatam al-Anbiya commander, the IRGC's ballistic missile organization, told Iranian media that Israel had crossed all red lines by attacking Beirut and widening its offensive in southern Lebanon. Iran fired again, more waves. And then, and this is the development from just a few hours ago as I'm recording this, Iran announced it would halt its military offensive against Israel, saying that Israel had learned a lesson. But the halt came with a condition so stark it barely qualifies as a pause. Iran warned that its military would launch harsher attacks if Israel engages in any further hostile acts. Shortly after Iran's announcement, Trump posted on social media saying both sides are looking for an immediate ceasefire and that final negotiations on peace are proceeding. And an Israeli official told NPR, on condition of anonymity, that Israel agreed to stop attacking Iran, but that the military would continue to operate in Lebanon. Read that last sentence again. Israel agreed to stop attacking Iran, but it will continue operating in Lebanon. And Iran has said the ceasefire is conditional on all fronts, which means by Iran's own stated terms, the ceasefire is already broken again, in the same breath that it was supposedly restored. This is not peace. This is a conflict that is pausing and restarting in cycles, each time at a slightly higher level of intensity, each time depleting military stockpiles on both sides, each time making any genuine negotiated outcome harder to reach. Now, I want to talk about what this means strategically, because the raw sequence of events only tells you what happened. It doesn't tell you what it means. And what it means is this. The fundamental miscalculation that has driven this conflict for months is now publicly exposed. A White House official, speaking to reporters on condition of anonymity, said exactly this. Trump underestimated the willingness of Iran to restart the conflict. The recent negotiations with Iran, in many ways, have exposed a fundamental miscalculation from Trump and the White House. Those are not the words of a critic. Those are the words of someone inside the building. Trump bet that Iran was too degraded, too economically strangled by the naval blockade, too politically weakened after losing Khamenei, to risk restarting hostilities. He was wrong. Iran still had nearly 30 ballistic missiles it was willing to fire in a single night. Iran still had the political will and the domestic pressure to respond to Israeli strikes on Beirut. Iran's Revolutionary Guard is not a rational actor operating purely on military calculus. It is a political military organization whose entire identity is built around resistance. When Israel kills people in Beirut's southern suburbs and the IRGC does nothing, it loses credibility inside Iran in a way that is existentially threatening to its political power, so it fired. And it will fire again if the conditions repeat. The Houthis add another layer to this that the mainstream coverage is mostly ignoring. Today, they announced they are banning Israeli-linked ships from sailing in the Red Sea. This is not a small development. The Houthis spent 2 years, from fall 2023 to fall 2025, disrupting Red Sea shipping in solidarity with Gaza. That disruption affected 15% of global shipping traffic. When they paused, global shipping routes began normalizing. Today, they are threatening to restart that disruption. If Red Sea shipping comes under attack, again at the same time the Strait of Hormuz remains under the U.S. naval blockade, you are looking at 2 of the world's most critical maritime choke points simultaneously constrained. The global economic consequences of that scenario are severe enough that they would force responses from China, India, Japan, and South Korea, all of which are heavily dependent on Gulf oil moving through these waterways. And speaking of China, Beijing has been watching every development in this conflict with a level of strategic interest that is impossible to overstate. China's economy runs on Gulf oil. Its Belt and Road infrastructure runs through the region. Its relationship with Iran is one of the most important economic partnerships Beijing has cultivated in the past decade. China has not intervened militarily, but it has not applied meaningful pressure on Iran either. And if this conflict escalates into a full resumption of hostilities, Beijing's calculations about whether to play a mediating role, or whether to simply protect its own economic interests by whatever means necessary, will shift rapidly. Trump's public statements today are pulling in contradictory directions simultaneously. He told Fox News the attacks won't help negotiations. Then he posted on social media claiming final peace negotiations are moving forward. Then, his own White House official admitted to reporters that Trump miscalculated Iran's willingness to restart conflict. The blockade, Trump confirmed, will remain in full force and effect until a final deal is reached. So the economic strangulation of Iran continues, while Iran fires missiles at Israel and threatens broader attacks, while Trump insists talks are proceeding. These three things cannot all be true at the same time. And that contradiction at the center of American policy is what makes the next 48 to 72 hours so genuinely unpredictable. Here is what you need to watch in the next 48 to 72 hours. First, Lebanon. Israel said it will continue operating in Lebanon even after agreeing to stop hitting Iran directly. If there is another major Israeli strike on Beirut's southern suburbs in the next day or two, Iran will face the same domestic pressure it faced on Sunday. The IRGC said broader. If they are forced to act again, they will not fire 30 missiles. They will fire more, and they will target different things. Second, the Houthis and the Red Sea. If Houthi attacks on Israeli-linked shipping in the Red Sea actually restart, watch how quickly global oil markets reprice. The combination of Hormuz blockade plus Red Sea disruption is a scenario that financial markets have not yet fully priced in because until today it seemed like a low probability outcome. It no longer does. Third, Iran's airspace. Tehran's Imam Khomeini. International Airport is still closed as I record this. When it reopens, and whether Iranian officials make any diplomatic statements in the hours after it reopens, will tell you whether Tehran is choosing to de-escalate for real, or whether the halt in place is a tactical pause before the next move. Here's the bottom line. 100 days into this war, the ceasefire that was announced with such fanfare on April 8th has been reduced to a document that neither side actually follows. Today, for the first time since that ceasefire, Iran fired nearly 30 ballistic missiles directly at Israeli military bases. Israel struck central and western Iran in response, defying a direct request from the American president. The Houthis fired at Israel from Yemen. Saudi Arabia sounded air raid sirens. And Iran's own Revolutionary Guard told the world that tonight was a warning and that broader responses are coming if hostilities continue. Day 100 is not a milestone. Day 100 is a turning point, because every miscalculation that has been quietly building inside the diplomatic process for 2 months just became public. Trump's belief that Iran was too weak to restart the fight exposed. Netanyahu's willingness to defy Washington when his own political survival demands it confirmed. Iran's calculation that the only language this conflict responds to is military force, validated by the fact that 30 missiles produced a Trump social media post calling for an immediate ceasefire within hours. The war that was supposed to be ending is not ending. The deal that was supposed to be finalizing is further away today than it was yesterday. And the people living in Tel Aviv, in Tehran, in Beirut, in Sana'a, in Kuwait City, and in the shipping lanes of the Red Sea and the Strait of Hormuz, they are the ones paying the price for every miscalculation made in Washington, Jerusalem, and Tehran. Subscribe and hit the bell. Because this situation is not slowing down, it is speeding up. And you need to understand exactly what is happening before the next wave hits. I'll see you in the next one.